So once again, welcome everybody.
The results are now visible in East Mosul. We're only months after the battle. Over 220,000 people have returned to their homes. 350,000 boys and girls who about 6 months ago were living under ISIS are now back in school. Markets are bustling and life is returning to the streets. Even in West Mosul, where the battle was most intense over the past 4 months, we are seeing thousands returning to their homes and beginning to pick up their lives after ISIS. Now, the old city of Mosul is a different story. This dense urban core was the final stage of the battle and has been in the news with photos of devastation from months of house-to-house and room-to-room fighting. There's one reason for the intensity of this battle. Hundreds of ISIS terrorists from all around the world, as far away as China, gathered in the old city, nearly all of them wearing explosive suicide vests, barricaded in fighting positions, using civilians as human shields. Over ISIS radios, terrorists holed up in the old city were speaking French, Chinese, Dutch, Russian, and Arabic with a non-Iraqi dialect. These terrorists rigged buildings with explosives, destroyed them as Iraqi forces approached, including the Grand Mosque of Al-Nuri, which had stood for nearly 7 centuries. They paraded civilians in front of their fighting positions, hid behind women and children, and used a hospital just north of the old city as a killing tower, placing snipers to murder civilians trying to escape. The world has not seen an enemy like this in decades, at least, and there is no neat and tidy way to root out suicidal terrorists from urban buildings. This is a war. Yet Iraqi forces place protection of the civilian population at the top of their mission, often at great risk to themselves. Where Iraqi forces fail to live up to their own high standards, the Iraqi government is investigating allegations, which we encourage. Iraqi forces also sought, at the top of their campaign plan, to ensure that suicide bombers from Tajikistan or Tunisia, who found their way to Mosul to terrorize the Iraqi people, would die in Mosul, rather than escape to terrorize us elsewhere. Syria is far more complicated. We do not have a government to work with in Syria, and in the absence of a credible political horizon that allows the Syrian people to determine their fate beyond the Assad regime, here's the reality. The international community will not be prepared to help rebuild Syria. Beyond Iraq and Syria, our coalition is equally focused on ISIS networks and affiliates around the world. Our working groups over the last few days here at the State Department focused intensively on curbing the flow of foreign fighters, countering ISIS finance, countering its false propaganda, and focusing on areas where ISIS seeks to plant roots as it loses its phony caliphate in Iraq and Syria. We've made progress in all of these areas. It's now extremely difficult for foreign fighters to get into Syria, and we're grateful for Turkey's efforts to seal its borders to these fighters. Those who had already entered earlier, it is our mission to ensure that they cannot get out, and they will die in Iraq or Syria. Meanwhile, we are building a global database of known foreign fighters, now with 18,000 verified names, with the support of our coalition partner Interpol. Of course, we cannot hide from the fact that many countries in this room, many countries within our coalition, do not see eye to eye on all issues, and that is the nature of a coalition. It is why we meet regularly in forums like this. There's no question, however, that 3 years into this global effort, we stand united. 72 members from around the globe, in common purpose, the destruction of ISIS and the protection of our own citizens and homelands through our joint cooperation.